Morning, we're going to revisit Exodus 17:9 and a few other verses. So Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us and go out. Fight against Amalek. Tomorrow, I will station myself on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua did as Moses told him and fought against Amalek, and Moses and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. So it came about when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed, and when he let his hand down, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy. Then they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands on one side and one on the other. Thus his hands were steady until the sun set. So Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. This morning, what I really want to revisit is the idea we've already spoken about with Joshua, that he was a man under authority. I want to read a definition of authority. This is, just to be completely transparent, this is from an AI. I used the prompt using only the Bible, give me a definition of the word authority. So the definition that it came up with, which I thought was pretty good, was authority is described as the God-given right and power to act in alignment with his will. So it's the God-given right and power to act in alignment with God's will. There's really two key pieces to authority. It's the freedom to decide and act, but also the power to complete actions. And those two things are very important. The freedom to decide and act and the power to complete actions as given by God. And this morning, the question that I want to ask myself and what I feel diving into is, we've touched on the idea of being under authority. We've talked about this idea that to be under authority, who's overseeing you? And that's the first thing really to dive into this morning, is who is overseeing you? Who has the right to tell you what to do? Who has the freedom to decide and act in your life? Who has the power to complete actions in your life? I struggle to hold fast to wanting me to be the one who gets to decide and to act and to complete actions. But what I notice throughout the Bible is it doesn't seem very often that when an authority figure comes to someone else, that they do what I do, which is let me pray about that. In our verse here, we don't see Joshua say to Moses, so Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us and go out, fight against Amalek." And Joshua said, "Let me pray about that, Moses, and I'll get back to you tomorrow." We don't see that. We don't see God come to Abraham and say, Abraham, give me your only son, sacrifice him on the mountain. And Abraham says, God, let me pray about that. We don't see Isaiah when the Lord says, here I am, here, who will go for us? And Isaiah says, here I am, send me. We don't see him pray about his instructions. When the law is read to the people in the days of Nehemiah, we don't hear them say, wow, that's really interesting, what you're saying from that book. Let me go pray about that. What we see is that they obeyed the authority that they were under. And in the New Testament, it seems to be the same way. It seems to be that there's definitely this idea of people being under authority. You'll notice that in the time of Stephen, when the deacons were chosen, that Paul says, all right, Peter says, okay, go choose for us men who are faithful, filled with the Spirit. He lists 2 or 3 qualifications, and go choose them and have them become deacons so that they can take care of serving the widows. And it doesn't say that the people went and prayed about that plan. It doesn't say that the guys that were chosen prayed about it. And to be clear, I'm not against praying about what we're supposed to do. I'm not against praying about things. I'm on one side, right? There's the side of the ultimate authority in our lives is God, and we need to be submitted to God. And then there's the side, and then there's another piece, though, which is God has placed authorities over us, and we need to be in subjection to them. What fascinates me, what my story is, so I'm getting more involved in our church in Mexico. And the way I got more involved in the church wasn't because I felt led to it. It wasn't because I felt like the Lord spoke to me about Mexico. It's because God, I think the Holy Spirit spoke to me about being under authority. And if I've placed myself in a church and I've chosen to be there because it seems like obedience and submission in the New Testament is not compulsory in some ways. It seems like it's out of a will. It seems like we have a choice. It seems like that doesn't mean we shouldn't submit, but it seems like the pastor that's over me is someone that I choose to submit to. And if I don't want to submit to this pastor, then I should find the pastor I'm willing to submit to. And so I was like, you know what? We're doing stuff in Mexico. And whether or not I'm called to Mexico, I should be getting involved in Mexico because the church is involved, heavily involved with what we're doing in Mexico. And now I'm getting more and more and more and more involved. But it started with being under authority. It started with going to someone else and saying, you have the freedom to decide and act in my life, and I want you to have the power to complete actions in my life. And I'm going to become part of your authority. I'm going to become part of your power to complete actions. And the first thing this morning is, how are we doing with that? Are we under authority? Are we under authority? The difficult concept is that independence does not bring blessing. That's not pretty much anywhere in the Bible. Independence does not bring blessing. In fact, independence is, from the very beginning, what caused a lot of problems. Adam and Eve were not under the authority of God. Adam and Eve did not allow God's words to be the ones that decided how they would act. Adam and Eve did not submit to the authority of God, and they chose to eat of the tree. And then from there, it's just a downward spiral of people choosing a different authority. How are we doing today in regards to being submitted to authority, being under authority? And to define it again, it means being under someone who gets to decide and act in my life and who has the power to complete actions in my life. Basically, I'm allowing their authority to influence me. I'm under someone else's authority. And there's a lot in the Bible about being under authority. There's a lot in the Bible. I mean, you talk about the congregation submitting to the pastor. And to be clear, I'm not talking about if the pastor is asking us to do something unbiblical. I'm not talking about if God has specifically told you not to do something. There's something the Lord had specifically told me. This particular church activity, this particular service, you're not supposed to be a part of. It was something that was putting me up in front of people. It was something that was puffing me up. It was something that the last time I did it, I struggled with pride for 2 weeks. And so my senior pastor, the man that I'm trying to place myself under authority to, came to me several times and said, hey, can you teach? We were even down in Mexico, and he said, can you teach tomorrow? And I told him I can't because God told me I can't. And so I'm not saying don't be submitted to God. What I am saying is are we submitted to the people that are around us? Are we under the authority of our church leaders? Are we under the authority of our government? Our children, if you're a kid, if you're a young guy, young girl, young gal, I don't know the correct language these days, because apparently I'm getting old. If are you under the authority of your parents? And the controversial one, wives, are you under the authority of your husbands? Husbands, are you under the authority of God? Because here's the crazy thing. Joshua was under authority. And he was under the same kind of authority that I am at work. If today my boss comes to me and says, here's a broom, start sweeping, then I should start sweeping. But here's what comes with that. Here's why it's important to be under authority. We have in other verses about Joshua. In Numbers 11:28, it says, then Joshua, the son of Nun, the attendant of Moses from his youth, said, Moses, my Lord, restrain them. This is him talking to Moses about the golden calf. And you want to talk about blessing. You want to talk about being under authority and what comes with being under authority. If you look at the life of Joshua, and we're going to dive into this more, I've only done a small study so far for us. So the first time we're introduced to him in the Bible, he's being chosen as the commander to go again in a battle. He's a young man, and he's chosen to be the leader of an army. Later, we see that when it's time for, and I don't know the timeline of this, so later or before this, just the first physical time in the current Bible that I read, but at some point before or after this, it says, so Moses arose with Joshua his servant, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. This is the receiving of the 10 Commandments. Joshua got to go halfway up the mountain. Joshua got to kind of be like Peter and James and John going to the Mount of Transfiguration. He got to be like Peter and James and John getting to see a dead girl raised. He got to pull away privately with Moses. What else comes from being under authority? In Exodus 33:11, it says, thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, just as a man speaks to his friend. When Moses returned to the camp, his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent. He got to be closer to God. The only folks that got closer to God than Joshua were Moses and the priests who served inside the tabernacle. Otherwise, he was as close as you can get, and we don't really have a record of any other Israelite doing this. We don't have the record of other Israelites going and sitting at the tent, but it says his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent. But he's referenced as the attendant of Moses, the servant of Moses. What else? Moses is given a charge by God in Numbers 13:2. Send out for yourself men so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I'm going to give to the sons of Israel. You shall send a man from each of their father's tribes, everyone a leader among them. And it says, these are the men, it says in Numbers 13:8, from the tribe of Ephraim, Hosea the son of Nun. And then we clarify that in Numbers 13. These are the names of the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land. But Moses called Hosea, the son of Joshua, the son of Nun, Joshua. He gets chosen to be one of the 12 spies. That's a big deal. I mean, think about this. You've got like 1 million or 2 million Israelites. You've just gotten to the promised land. God told you to spy it out. What is he saying? He's saying, send out 12 people that are going to come back and give a report of the land to all the people. That's a really big deal. That's a very, very, very big deal. I mean, imagine if your family is going to go move to Italy. And so your dad chooses you, your whole family, your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your second cousins, your whole family is moving to Italy. And so your dad picks you and a couple other people and says, I want you to fly to Italy. I want you to go check it out. And I want you to come back to us and tell us what it's going to be like. It's such a big deal because at that point, your dad, he's now delegating something powerful to you. Because if you come back and say what the 10 of the 12 spies say, which is, wow, Italy's a really cool country. The food's phenomenal. The people are great, but dude, it's expensive over there. Or I don't know, like they were not nice to foreigners over there. What is Moses going to say? Ignore those guys who physically went there. Don't take that. Don't take what they're saying into account. What's he going to do if you come back with a bad report? And so this was a huge responsibility that he was giving to Joshua. Later, at the end of his life, we see that Joshua is then chosen to become the leader of the whole nation of Israel. The whole nation. And this is what it says in Numbers 27, 18, 21. So the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him and have him stand before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation and commission him in their sight. You shall put some of your authority on him in order that all the congregation of the sons of Israel may obey him. Moreover, he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire for him by Urim and Thummim before the Lord. At his command they shall go out, and at his command they shall come in, both he and the sons of Israel with him, even all the congregation. Moses is at the end of his life. And God says, take some of your authority, some of your right to decide and act, some of your power to complete actions. And now I want you to give it to Joshua. Up until this point, Joshua is described a lot as the servant or the attendant of Moses. He's under authority, but being under authority and serving well leads to blessing. He gets to go up the mountain. He gets to be near to God. He gets to be close to Moses. It leads to position and opportunity. He gets to be the leader of an army, leader in battles. He gets to be one of the 12 spies. And we're going to dive into this more in another time. He may have been an elder, but the only people that ever had the Spirit of God on them were elders, priests, prophets, judges, and kings in the Old Testament. Otherwise, if you weren't one of those, you pretty much as a rule did not have the Spirit of God on you. But it says, so the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit. So I don't know what happened, but at some point in Joshua's journey, the Spirit of God was upon him. The Spirit of God was with him. And he might be one of the rarest people who actually had the Spirit on him, and he wasn't a prophet. He would become one, but he wasn't one yet. So here's the big takeaway this morning. What are we missing out by not being under authority? And I want to share with you what you do, right? I want to share, how do we get under authority? I think about it like work. Treat the people in authority over you as if they were your bosses at work. Why? Because we understand work, right? So what would I do at church? How do I put myself under authority at church? Go to your pastors and talk to them and say, here's the thing. I need to grow. I want to learn. I want to be near to God. And so I want to submit to your authority. How can I help? Where do we need help in the church? What needs doing? And who can I be meeting with on a regular basis to learn how to do that better? Who can oversee me so I can learn? And what needs doing? And they might say something you don't want to do. They might say, man, we need help in the children's ministry right now. Regardless of whether or not you want to do it, you should go and do it. Unless the Lord God Almighty himself tells him you shouldn't do it, you should go and do it. Why? Because blessing comes from being under authority. Authority comes from being under authority. Doors open from being under authority. Our former youth pastor moved to Arizona and gave up his authority. He used to be the men's leader and the youth pastor here, moved to Arizona. Now he's just another guy in the congregation. He just got ordained as a youth pastor at a church. Why? I know him. He was probably serving. He put himself under authority. He made himself available to authority. He submitted to authority. And now he's a youth pastor again. Place yourself under authority today and watch what the Lord will do. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you.